Alright guys, we are back for episode 4, and this episode is going to be entirely a building time lapse. So I figured I would go ahead and kind of walk you through my my thought process here as we put together this building. So to start with, I am just choosing a palette to go with. I don't 100% know what I'm going for yet, but I figure I might as well start with the materials I have easy access to in the survival world. And yep, still no plan. I'm just throwing down blocks and picking a space that I think will work. I definitely want to leave enough space for the machines that I'm going to be using. So here you see me setting up the basic coke oven, and end up going with 3 of those. The idea is eventually to have conveyors running probably underneath these machines and feeding them coal and taking the coal coke out of them. And the reason for those immersive engineering pumps on top is these machines will create creosote, as you saw in the last episode, and if I want to automate this, I gotta set up pumps in order to pull all that creosote out and put it somewhere. And so usually when I go to build something big like this, I start with the inside and build to the outside, because building from the outside is nice because you end up with something that looks pretty cool, but it's not always optimal for what you need it to do. And another benefit from building from the inside to the outside is that once you have all the guts of your structure fleshed out, you have something that makes a good, like a good skeleton to build around. Whereas if you just build from the outside, you don't really have a plan, you don't have any limitations or anything. And when it comes to creativity, it helps to have some form of limitations. And the machines that I'm throwing in here are the machines that I am most likely to be using early on. We need coal coke right away, because in order to get steel, we need a blast furnace, and the blast furnaces only run on coal coke. And immersive engineering, to get pretty much anywhere, you're going to need a lot of steel. You're going to need a ton of steel. Here I'm trying to remember what the darn fluid container for immersive engineering is called. There's a multi-block structure. I think it's just called a tank. Yep. Which can hold, I'm not sure how many buckets. It's a ton of fluid. So my idea is just to run a combined pipe from all 3 coke ovens into this tank and use it as sort of a temporary storage, and then just pump out whatever I need in order to make all the treated wood. So I believe that is the only use of creosote other than using it for the chemical thrower. Eventually I'll knock down all these machines before I take the blueprint of the whole building. The only reason I'm building them now is so that I have a rough idea of how they're going to be laid out, so I can build around that. So part of this building process is just kind of answering questions in my head of, you know, how I'm going to have all these machines linked up and provided with materials and whatnot. Okay, and here's where I'm trying to figure out, trying to solve the problem of how to actually get coke into these machines without doing it manually. That's probably not something I'm going to have set up right away in survival mode, but I wanted a rough idea of what kind of space it was going to take and where I was going to put it. Those blocks that I'm placing underneath the machines are the Immersive Engineering item routers. And essentially what they do, they don't pull or push items, which I'll explain more about in a second, but they determine what can be pushed or pulled from their location. And what I find out here is that the coke ovens do not pull items, so these item routers won't work because they don't push items either. There's like a mechanic in Minecraft where it's possible to move items from one block to another, but only if the receiving block is pulling or the providing block is pushing. And not all blocks do that like automatically. The router's one that does not. So eventually I determined that I have to use a conveyor to go from the router up to the coke oven, because conveyors do push items. I'm not sure if they pull or not though. So here I'm still trying to work out the kind of space I'm going to need to run coal in there. And here I'm trying to find out if the coke ovens will push items, specifically the coal coke, out to the routers, and they do not. And it doesn't seem that the conveyors can pull either. So eventually I realize I'm going to have to use hoppers in order to pull the coal coke out of the coke oven. And yeah, this isn't strictly necessary to find out in creative world. I could do this in survival, but it'll save me a lot of time on the survival let's play if I know this kind of stuff ahead of time. And it turns out that the conveyors are not just like flowing water in Minecraft, which is often what you use in vanilla Minecraft as a conveyor. They're actually pseudo containers, so you can actually run hoppers into them, and the hoppers will drop the items onto the conveyors. And now we're just seeing if we can make a good looking separation between all the coke ovens. And here I'm just making sure that I can pull creosote out of the tank there from the bottom as I need to do it from the top, or vice versa. So I want to determine how high the bottom level of the building needs to be. And now we're just filling in the walls and the roof. A lot of these materials that I'm placing down, especially the cobblestone, end up being just temporary to get a rough idea of how I want to lay everything out before I decide on the final materials. And then right here I run into a problem. Yeah, here I'm trying to put scaffolding on the pipes, because if you read in the Immersive Engineering manual, it says that if you right click on a pipe with any type of scaffolding, it'll place the scaffolding in the same location. Kind of, make it look like a pipe is coming through a more or less solid wall. But unfortunately, no matter what I try, it just doesn't work. Here I'm going through the manual to make sure I'm understanding that right. But yeah, it just doesn't work. Even go so far as to going into survival mode to see if that has any effect, but nope. Yeah, just filling in the back wall now. Right now this thing looks terrible from the outside, but that changes pretty quickly. More so in the next video. In this one, I basically get the machine area of the interior done, and then in the next video I kind of know what I'm doing, and I just quickly rip through everything else. And here I run over to my survival save. Basically, I just want to see what items I have an abundance of and kind of build around that. Turns out I have a lot of that marble that Quark adds to the world. I end up using probably more of it than I should in the build, because unfortunately I can only mine that stuff up one block at a time. In the end, it doesn't really matter what materials I have on hand in survival, because I'm going to have to gather up a lot of materials anyway. Yep, and here I'm thinking about using marble for the ceiling, because I have a ton of it and it looks pretty nice. You see, I'm just taking out the corners of the outer part of the structure, because that's not something you'll see from the inside, and gives you more flexibility on how to build the outside of the building. And I determined that I might as well have a symmetrical room design, because both sides of the room are going to have 3x3 multi-block structures. So now we know the dimensions of the building. Yep, and now I'm looking at what options I have for lighting this area up that isn't just torches. I'll probably end up using these lanterns, or even the powered lanterns, which are affect a much wider area, and they also prevent mobs from spawning in the area that they affect, even if they're not lighting up the whole area. So I eventually want to get those in there. But after messing around with them enough, I realized I'm just going to have to put torches down behind the machines and lots of other places until I can get my hands on some better materials. And now I'm looking at the blast furnace, the crude blast furnace. There's two of them in Immersive Engineering. And at first I was thinking on the left side of the room I'd have a lot of storage and machines to, small machines to craft things. But then I decided I'm just going to fill the whole room up with 3x3 multi-block structures. So 2 blast furnaces and 3 coke ovens in the tank, which works out pretty nicely. Yeah, still messing with light options here. Yep. And then there's a trick you can use with glowstone where you just put it in the floor and then you cover it with anything that's not a full-size block, so slabs or carpets or even transparent blocks, just some glass or whatever, and it'll still light up the same amount of area even though they're covered. Unfortunately, it's going to be a while until I get glowstone, but I wanted to figure that into the design of this building. And here I'm just taking apart all the multi-block structures I put up because I don't want them to be a part of the schematic. So that's something I want to put together, you know, as I get the materials for it. Yeah, just getting rid of all the conveyors underneath there, because I'll probably figure out a better system for how to load the coke ovens when I actually put them together in survival. Okay. Yep, just gonna pop off the glowstone too, so I don't have to worry about that being part of the schematic. And we're just having a peek at it, see if there's anything else we want to change. And here's where I decide that it has way too much gray. So I start experimenting with spruce wood, since we have a ton of that around the current base in survival. Oh yeah, first I tried the sandy bricks added by Quark, and I just think it looks terrible, so I don't stick with that. There's the spruce. Considered using the treated wood that Immersive Engineering adds, which I probably could do. I already have quite a bit of it in survival mode, a little over a stack of it. But I figured I would just use spruce for now, just in case it's a problem. And here I was just seeing if I wanted the machines to sit on spruce. And nope. Okay, and then after that I decide that this is going to be a multi-level structure, and the front area will be kind of the living area and the workshop, because it's going to be the house that I sort of live in, as well as the steel smeltery, or at least the starting steel smeltery. So that's what that front area is. And here I'm using a trick that I tried out in one of my survival worlds, the one where I was playing Intangible and Botania together, and it's just kind of creating like a foundation that looks like it's crumbling, or just really old. Which looked kind of cool, but in the end I get rid of it in the second video because I just decided it wasn't the kind of aesthetic I'd have for kind of a steampunk style house. And that's all for now, folks. I will see you in the next one.